Well, welcome back to the Reality Halfway House. Today we're going to be taking kind of an ancillary view of kind of a mainstream topic. What about the blue pill? Everybody talks about the red pill, but what about that darn blue pill? We are caught between worlds. This is the Reality Halfway House. I'm your host, Jones Nelson. And of course, you know, the 1999 would have been cult classic, The Matrix, discusses this topic, this esoteric topic about the blue pill and the red pill. And the thing I find the most interesting about the Matrix movies, and I've watched the series multiple times, is that in the movies, it was kind of this alternative cult classic that went mainstream, almost kind of like an alternative band that went mainstream, like a Nirvana. It's like, dude, we didn't even really want to be here in the first place. What happened to us, kind of a thing. But what it did do was it introduced this notion that we are perhaps living in a simulation, right? And that we're all cogs in the machine. We're all batteries, as they say. And it gave us this opportunity to start pondering these topics, these esoteric topics of, hey, who am I in the grand scheme of things? Now, I say no spoilers, but the movie's almost 30 years old. There's a point in the movie, you know, kind of the first quarter or so, where Morpheus sits down with Neo, and he explains this concept of the red pill and the blue pill. And obviously the blue pill is you accept the Matrix and you just live your life plugged in, oblivious to the truth. Or you take the red pill where you basically understand and accept the fact that you are in fact imprisoned, enslaved, and you want to break free from that imprisonment and wake up, okay? And find your own sovereignty again. And that's kind of the notion in a nutshell. Obviously, go watch the movies if you're interested in that sort of thing. Everybody talks about taking the red pill because that's obviously personified or are really kind of positioned in the movies as like the right course of action. Okay, and I would say for years and years I didn't disagree with that point, you know, because it's like in every movie they kind of lead you in a direction to where you want to go through and you know, kind of saddle up or attach your trailer to a specific direction. That's a poor way to say it. I don't want to say it. You want to root for the good guy. You want to root for a specific person, and they kind of lead you in there. Well, everybody wants to root for Neo, who then takes the red pill and unplugs and yada, yada, yada. Right? So at the end of the day, we too should want what Neo wants, and we should want the red pill, and we should want to unplug in the truth and everything. Now, I'm not saying that any of that's bad. I'm not saying that wanting the truth and living in the truth is bad. I think that that's ultimately what how it should be. I think at the end of the day, the truth is paramount, and that we live in a world of lies and deception, and we just have never known any different. For many of us, this has been our entire lives. Wow, I don't know if you could hear that. I don't know if my compressor or my limiter is strong enough, but there is a massive thunderstorm going on outside, so fingers crossed that we'll stay in the air here. At the end of the day, we're caught in this, like I said, this in-between world spot. That's the whole premise behind this Reality Halfway House, between these people that have taken the red pill versus taking the blue pill, or people that are somewhere in between. They're in the process of waking up to the reality that's around us. And the thing is, there's so much coming out day to day. If you look this last week, this last Thursday, President Trump came forward and said, hey, listen, you know, I mean, I'm not like a pro-Trumper. I'm one of those guys that, again, is kind of pro-truth. It's what are you bringing to the table? It's like we need to go through and have authenticity and truth. And so to me, when I watched his speech, and I actually watched it live, you know, he said a lot of the same things. You know, again, like I said, I'm not a pro-Trumper, not an anti-Trumper. I'm not really on a team like that. It's more of like what's going to be the fundamentals, the truth that's going to bring humanity itself forward. But what he did do was interesting. He said, look, our elections have been compromised. We're dropping a lot of information that's going to, you know, basically show how our elections have been interfered with, et cetera, et cetera. I haven't looked at any of the documents. You know, I work multiple jobs. I don't have time to look at that stuff, but a lot of people do. And, And we'll kind of see what that kind of fleshes out to be over the next week or two. But what I will say is this: I agree with that. I mean, ultimately, we should have free and fair elections. I think that's ultimately true. But I think at the end of the day, the bigger question is: do the elections themselves even matter? And you're going to get a lot of people that say, "Well, elections absolutely matter. It's one vote, one voice." And I think fundamentally, the notion of being able to live in a world where you can go through, or in a country where you can go through and raise your hand and cast your vote and really have a voice is a very great notion, a very good way of looking at things and wanting to proceed, because that gives people the opportunity to be able to say, hey, listen, I want to live in this particular way. I want to live in this manner. I want to have this set of standards that we go through and live our lives by. But I think fundamentally, the world doesn't work that way. If you actually look at the founding, and I don't claim to be some sort of an expert, but there's been a lot of people weighing in on this over the last couple of days. And as I try to, quote unquote, concatenate the way that they have articulated this over the last week, is that our founding fathers really were looking for people that were landowners to be able to go through and cast their votes, right? Which makes sense to me. Again, I don't know the full details on it kind of stuff, because again, I'm not one of those folks that's just really dug into it. But I do feel like if you're going to have a voice, you should have some skin in the game, right? Like, why are we letting everybody go through and weigh in on something that they're not even willing to risk anything for? Does that make sense? Like, if you're a homeowner, then, or a landowner, then you have skin in the game. You have skin in the game of America, or whatever the country is. And you say, well, wait a second, Jones, man, we can't afford to buy houses. They're so expensive. We can't afford to do that stuff right now. That's really unfair. For millennials and Gen Z, none of us can afford to do it. All we can afford to do is rent. So you're saying that our voice doesn't matter? Our vote doesn't matter? Is that what you're saying to me right now? Well, I'm saying that the entire system has put us in a position right now where we can't do that. Where quite literally they're removing the opportunity for you to have skin in the game. And I think it's bullshit. I think it's absolute bullshit. And I think at the end of the day that we as individuals should be very frustrated. Well, I'm not going to tell you how to feel. You can feel however you want. You may love it. I'm frustrated by it because I think that because of the way the system is set up, they're preventing people from having the opportunity to be able to go through and procure that skin in the game if they want. Because more and more, we don't have the ability to be able to even procure those things. I saw this post this morning, and I thought it was interesting, and it kind of goes along with this whole red pill blue thing. It's by Renzo. He says, nobody talks about how we're all paying $15 for sandwiches now and just pretending that's normal. 5 years ago, that same sandwich was $8. The price doubled, and the only explanation we got was, quote, supply chain issues, which apparently means forever. Here's the thing. That's right. When I was in college, you had those $5 footlongs. You had from Subway, right? You had the $5 pizzas from Little Caesars. I mean, it was always, cardboard with cheese on it. But at least, for starving college students, man, you can get a pie for $5, right? You had, what do they say, $1 McChickens from McDonald's. And I'm not, please understand me. I haven't eaten fast food in like 5 or 6 years. Like, it's just after I started going down rabbit holes, there was like no going back. But my point being is that even a starving college student making, $6-7 an hour could still pay their rent, pay their utilities, and even have a pizza every now and then. And it's like, it was still tight, but you still had the opportunity to be able to, live. And now it's gotten so expensive that you don't have the opportunity to even do those things. That same pie, $5 pie is now $10. It's like everything has doubled and gotten more expensive, and wages have absolutely not kept up. Now, what am I saying? Are we saying that we should raise the minimum wage? No, I think that's all bullshit too. It is. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, there is validity. My degree is in finance, and I spent over 20 years in finance. I know I don't look like it, but I've managed almost $1 billion in assets over the course of my life. That's not a brag. That's just, it's like it was a day in the life in the office kind of a thing. You know what I mean? That doesn't make me an expert. That doesn't make me an economist. I'm not going on UBS, on Bloomberg this afternoon to give an update, but I've had some time in the pit. And the thing is, if you increase those minimum wage, the minimum wage, the cost, it's going to cost more for everything else. Like, I mean, there are inconsistencies in every single side of that argument. So am I saying that it's the perfect world? No. Should wages have kept up with where they're at? Yeah, I mean, probably so. But again, it's a robs Peter to pay Paul type scenario where the more you increase the wages, right, at the end of the day, you're going to go through and have to increase the price of the services or the cost of the goods so that you can keep up with the wages. It's this vicious cycle. But the thing everybody's focused on is how much am I getting paid? How much am I working? How much is that sandwich? Why is it $15? Everybody's so focused myopically on that system that they're not looking at the bigger picture. Like, nobody wants to jump up to 30,000 feet. I don't know if people are scared of heights. I'm not really sure what the issue is. I don't know if people are so consumed with their phones and social media that they don't want to take that opportunity to slow down, pull themselves out of the quote-unquote matrix and jump up to 30,000 feet and look at what's going on. I'm not trying to say I got it all figured out. I don't, right? But clearly we are in something that is, like I said, much bigger than what we are. And I just, the more I have learned, especially over the last 5 years, I remember I went to college in 2001. Like 2 or 3 weeks after I went to college, the planes hit the towers. And I thought the world was over. I was like, I'm 18 years old. I'm going to get drafted. I'm going to get sent to Afghanistan or Iraq or whatever. And it was just the world was over. I was like, this is it. This is the world has finally ended. And the thing is, we've watched these things, and it was like everything has felt off since then. I got into the finance industry. I was a young stockbroker, and then 2008 happened. I was working 7 days a week, 14-hour days, getting my head ripped off by investors that were pissed off that they had to wait for 4 hours to get somebody on the line to talk to. I've had death threats. I've had my family threatened for people I've never spoken to once before. Just mean, awful, hateful people that are just pissed off at a system that they don't understand or can't control. They weren't mad at me. They were mad at the system. They're mad because they've lost money. I totally get it. I mean, it's like, I understand. And, at the time, it's hard not to take it personally when every single time you answer the phone, it's like, you literally, I hope you get cancer and die. Somebody told me that. Over and over, there are scenarios where people get so wrapped up in this system that we live in, they can't see outside of it. Again, I've worked with money for so long. Again, I've transacted into the billions. I've actually seen $1 trillion. Actually seen with my own eyes $1 trillion. Now, granted, on a balance sheet, on a computer screen, but not just like a mock-up of it on TV. Like, I've seen it in the context of work. I mean, at the end of the day, my relationship with money is significantly different than what I would say the typical Joe is. That doesn't make me better. It doesn't make me worse. It just means that I see money differently. And I can tell you that money really and truly, in the grand scheme of things, is this means to an end. It's an intermediary. It's a distraction point. It's a roadblock, a bottleneck. It's something in between to get you to what you want. Because at the end of the day, what do you really want? What do a lot of people really want? I think if you really boiled things down and got away from the cars and the toys and the trinkets and everything, I think most people want to be healthy. I think most people want to have a solid family life, a nice home where they can go through and raise their family and, live their life, a job that they don't hate. I think deep down, most people want to work and they want to find meaning and purpose in their work, right? None of that, if you really boil down, none of that even really requires money. The infrastructure that we live in today definitely requires that we have that money, correct? Right? I mean, we can't exist without it. The Bible says, and see, everybody likes to misquote this. This gets misquoted all the time. And say, well, money is the root of all evil. No. It says the love of money is the root of all evil. It's the love of it. See, the thing is, I used to explain this to clients, when I'm sitting down in front of them. Money is like a chainsaw. You know, it's a tool. You know, you can chop down a forest with it and you can build a home, or you can chop your leg off. You can cut your leg off with it. I mean, it's just a tool. And lending and leverage and loans and all the other things that go with it, interests and mortgages, it's all branches off of the same thing. But really, it's not the money that we want. It's the thing that the money will get. And that's the big thing that we need to understand, is that at the end of the day, we end up shifting our focus from the things that we actually want and onto the money, the intermediary, the bottleneck in between. And that's what we end up selling our lives for, is this bullshit money system. And I apologize for the language today. I'm just really irritated. And it's not at anyone in particular. It's not even at the system. You know, it's like everybody talks about this evil, controlled, system in government, and you hear deep state and you hear lizards and blah, blah, blah. There's so much garbage out there, man. And the matter of it is, this is what drives me the most crazy about the whole thing. Everybody comes out definitively saying, oh, it's this. It's the deep state, or it's the reptilians, or it's the aliens, or it's the fill in the freaking blank. Nobody knows. That's the thing. Nobody knows. But everybody is a resident expert on what that thing is. Everybody. It doesn't, and you find your favorite, and you can say, well, Jones, you've got a podcast. Are you trying to be one of those? Man, dude, I've done radio for 28 years. Like, me not having a podcast is like, I don't know, it's stupid. It's like owning a sandwich shop and not eating sandwiches. I don't know how to describe it. It's like, at the end of the day, it was a foregone conclusion. It's like I've always got to be talking. I've had a microphone in front of my face since I was 15 years old. It's just like, this is just who I am now. I'm not I would submit to you that I'm just as full of shit as everybody else that you're listening to, right? I'm not going to stand here and say I have all the answers, though. I'm going to tell you that I don't. I'm going to tell you the older that I get, the more I realize I don't know. That's just the truth. It's like when I read the Bible. I've read the Bible cover to cover multiple times, and I've been in it most of my life. That does not mean I'm a biblical scholar. It does not mean I'm a theologian. You know, I can kind of poke my way around in there. But here's the thing. Every time I read it, I'm like, holy smokes, I've never read that before, even though I have. I get something new out of it every single time. And the thing is, the older I get, the more experiences I have, the more I'm getting out of life every single time. You know, it's just, things ebb and flow. And if we shift our focus and we're only focusing in on money, we're not focusing in on the thing that we want. And money becomes the carrot that's on the stick that we're constantly chasing, like those old cartoons that we'll never catch. And that was the point. That was the bullshit point about this whole system. And that comes back to elections. If you go through and you cast your vote, you feel good because you did something, right? You voted, you took a stand. But at the end of the day, what is Trump even trying to get at? I mean, I saw the videos, like you all saw the videos, of people pulling out those ballots at the end of the day, or them blocking out the windows of the fucking cardboard and all the other bullshit on election night. Again, I'm not on Team Trump. I'm not on anybody's team. But it's like, man, if we're going to go through and have these fair and free elections, they have to be just like they have to be fair and free. And if people are going to cheat, I don't give a shit what side you're on. It doesn't matter. Left, right. Again, what do they say? It's wings of the same bird. And it's the truth. That is the truth. You know, human beings are corrupt to the core. All of us. Which is why I say you shouldn't trust me just like you shouldn't trust anybody. You need to make sure that you're anchoring yourself in the pursuit of truth every day. And maybe that's just me telling you that. I say on my radio show all the time, I'll be sharing anecdotes and this, that, and the other. And it's like, you know, I don't know who needs to hear this, maybe it's just me. Sometimes I have to say things out loud just to hear it myself. And maybe that's the whole point of this podcast. Maybe this podcast at the end of the day is just verbal masturbation that is just giving me the opportunity to hear back what I need to hear myself. I don't know. He's like, gosh, Jones, you're in such a pissed off mood today. So this is where I came. I'm sitting there drinking my coffee this morning. And I was thinking, just kind of letting my mind wander a little bit as I'm waking up this morning. And I was thinking about, what am I going to do, man? Just a couple of months ago, I left a finance gig because I took it because it was an easy gig. I've been in the industry for over 20 years. This particular swath was a super easy job, like super easy job. I mean, if you're watching the video, you can see that I'm in my recording studio. I'm an audio engineer. I'm a producer. I'm a musician. I put out music. I do music videos. I work with artists all over the world. I've been in radio for a long time. It's my gig. Well, this was an easy finance gig. It was work from home. I was able to get my work done really quickly and efficiently because I've been doing this forever and I'm highly efficient. I'm a geek in that kind of a regard. So I was able to do the job early, do it well. I exceeded expectations. I mean, my accuracy was almost 100%. I was an exceptional employee. Not to toot my own horn. That's just literally how the numbers fleshed out because I work really hard at it. But what that did is it allowed me to pick up my guitars, throughout the day. I play guitar almost every day and got paid for it. But then at some point, they saw, well, you're exceeding expectations by 40%. And so they tripled my workload, didn't give me a raise. I get a ridiculously stupid low raise for exceeding expectations. I was like, you know what? This easy job that I took for not a lot of money, so I had plenty of time to do music, is not worth it anymore. So I bailed on that position, and I've been doing trade work or blue collar work, something I've never done in my life for the last couple of months. I've talked about this in the last couple of podcasts, and it's been really interesting because I've looked at it as kind of an investment. Again, I've been a stockbroker for most of my adult life, and so I've looked at it as an opportunity to quote unquote buy low and sell high. Getting into potentially flipping houses or doing something along those lines. But in order to be able to do that, you have to be able to understand early on how to mitigate costs. This is all coming back to the Matrix and blue pills. Just hang there with me. And so I'm having to go through and to redo or shake up my existing paradigm, right? Because I'm learning a language right now. I'm starting to learn every day that learning a new skill or a new trade or something like this is like learning a new language. It's the truth. I don't know, I've swung a hammer, but I wouldn't say that I'm proficient at it. As a matter of fact, when I was doing something with a hammer, the guy I'm apprenticing under is like, you're holding that hammer wrong and you're hammering wrong. Something as rudimentary as swinging a hammer, but, I felt like an idiot, but at the same token, I've never been taught how to do that. So it's kind of like, why should I feel bad about it? If you don't know, you don't know, kind of a thing. And that has been kind of the MO in doing this, is that there's so much of this stuff that I don't know, and I feel bad that I don't know it, but I've never had the need and or want. It's like I grew up with the internet, and everything has been online. I've been working on a computer my whole life because that's what I was told to do. I've never had to build anything like this, and I've never had a need to it. And if you'd hire somebody out to do it. So now I'm learning how to do it so that I don't have to pay somebody to do it. That's why I went to recording school, so I can record my own records. I don't have to pay somebody to do it. Becoming self-sufficient is really the currency. You want to talk about what replaces the dollar? It's becoming self-sufficient. But in order to do that, you have to be willing to fail. You have to be willing to look stupid. You have to be willing to get outside of your comfort zone and put yourself in a point where you're uncomfortable. Look, I'm not a prophet. I'm not a perfect person. I don't claim to be, but I pray all the time and I give God space. I let him talk. Again, I'm not a prophet. But I was praying yesterday. I was in a spot where I was working with a guy who was helping me fix my car because I don't know how to, again, Excel spreadsheets for 20 years, man. White collar guy. I don't know anything about this, but my neighbor is a grease monkey and he was helping me fix my car, and I just feel so inadequate because I'm standing there watching him do this, and I'm trying to help where I can, but like literally I have no idea what I'm doing because again, you don't know, you don't know. Like, I've never had a need to do it. I've always paid somebody to work on my car. But again, the currency of this world is your level of ability, your acumen. So I'm trying to learn how to do this, but I feel so uncomfortable, and I'm just praying all day. I'm like, God, man, why? Why has this last couple of months been so awkward? Why has it been so uncomfortable? And he told me, and again, I'm not a prophet, but he told me, he said, you know what? He said the comfort zone is like constipation. Gets you as an individual kind of get bound up and stale. Nothing moves in the comfort zone. Everything gets like sludge or comes to a halt. But he said when you get outside of your comfort zone, everything becomes lubricated. This is where change happens. This is where momentum happens. This is where it's, I can move through you. And I'm paraphrasing. It would never in a million years add to those words. I'm just trying to paraphrase. That's just kind of what he was getting at. Lubrication. But it's uncomfortable. Like, think about walking out into the ice and you don't have ice skates on and you're just not familiar, or you put on a pair of ice skates and you're not used to doing it. You're trying to learn something new. You're trying to speak a new language, learn a new instrument, learn something new, anything new. You're like one of those baby deers on the nature documentaries. You can't even walk. A brand new colt, you're just stumbling around until finally you get your legs underneath you. But that's where you grow. See, when we allow ourselves to get uncomfortable and get outside of our comfort zones, things start to move again, right? But this world has taught us that you need to have something comfortable. You need to have that quote-unquote American dream, the house, 2.5 kids, and a dog, white picket fence. But then they've made it unattainable for you to be able to get there. So now you're just chasing after it because that's what you're supposed to do. That's my comfort. That's what I want. And so you just kill yourself for it. Or unalive yourself for it, right? You're not allowed to say those things. Gosh, I'm so sick of all of this shit, man. Authenticity and being yourself and being the version of yourself that you were called to be. I think God stamped you with a purpose. I forget how God, I saw a video the day, he said, I think that free will exists. He says, but I think that each and every person has a purpose engraved in who they are. And I think that's right, man. Because when you go to work, today's Sunday, when you go to work tomorrow, do you want to be there? I would say the vast majority of people don't. The vast majority of people don't want to show up on Monday morning. They're not excited to be there. That pit in their stomach starts forming about 4:30 on Sunday night because you have to go back there. And why? Why do you have to go back there? Why? Because you have to go through and earn the money so that you can get the comfort, right? So you're constantly chasing the comfort zone where the discomfort is actually where there's lubrication. I think some people, and not most, but I think some people have figured it out. They understand that in order to be able to excel, they have to risk to do it. Again, I spent 20 years working in Wall Street, and the vast majority of that is risk management, risk and reward. And I've seen people risk a lot and lose a lot. And I've seen people risk a lot and gain a lot. The big thing is that if you don't take the risk, there's zero or virtually zero opportunity that you're actually going to go through and garner any sort of reward. There's that old expression, you don't weigh in, you don't wrestle. you know? If you don't go through and step up and take that risk, step outside of your comfort zone, what will you really accomplish? Right? So I was sitting there this morning drinking my coffee, and I was thinking, and it's just, this scene from the movie popped in. I just thought I'd share it for context. It's from The Matrix.
I know what you're thinking. Because right now I'm thinking the same thing. Actually, I've been thinking it ever since I got here. Why, oh why didn't I take the blue pill?
Yeah, why didn't I take the blue pill? So I've been talking all about like authenticity and stepping outside your comfort zone and all these other things. Well, all of those concepts, right? Self-sufficiency, authenticity, all of those seem to be like congruent with taking the red pill, right? That's understanding the truth. That's understanding that we are probably in some sort of a system that is enslaving and controlling us. Shit, when you're taxed on every single thing that you do, you're taxed at the pump, you're taxed at the grocery store, you're taxed. And if you want to get into an environment to where you are escaping some of those taxes, you've got to go through a lot of red tape, and you have to have a lot of research and acumen to be able to do it. The barrier to entry to getting to the point to where you're going through and precluding or excluding yourself from some of those taxes is pretty trying. I'm not saying it's impossible, because there are going to be some people out there that say, well, Jones, it's so easy for you to go through and to do that. Gosh, I mean, anybody could do it. Well, I'm here to tell you, I've worked with tens of thousands of people that are scared to death of anything that's finance related. The guy that I'm going through and apprenticing under right now is a ninja. Nothing scares that dude. He can go in and build anything. You know, that old expression, I can do anything with baling wire and duct tape. That is this guy in a nutshell. Incredible. I've just been in awe, slack-jawed, just watching this guy work. It is amazing. But we got to talking about something. I forget exactly the context now. And it was just about moving money, like just transferring money from one bank to another, like because he had to go through and make a mortgage payment, right? And I was like, oh, well, because he said, but it cost me $20 every time to go do it. I'm like, well, you're sending a wire transfer. Like, I've done this 10 billion times, you know? And I said, oh, that sounds like you're doing a wire transfer. You need to do an ACH transfer, automatic clearinghouse. And I would just watch his eyes glaze over. And he's like, I don't mess with any of that. Something super simple and rudimentary scares the shit out of most people. And you say, well, you can go through and set up an LLC or set up a trust, or you can do all these different things, and you take loans from yourself and all. Yeah, that's bullshit for most people. First and foremost, to be able to set up trust, you got to have a lawyer, or you got to go through all these legal processes. People get scared because it's so far outside their comfort zone. Now, as I said before, if you step outside that comfort zone, you start getting to a point of liquidity, or not liquidity. What did I say? Lubrication. There we go. Or that's what he told me. That's where things start to move. So, you know, maybe that's the case, right? But if you're so consumed and you're so busy working to pay your $15 for a sandwich, just to go through and to cling to some level of comforts, some level of normality, you don't have time to even research those things. I'm a musician. I love music, right? But I've been so busy working multiple jobs. I have two jobs right now. I would say usually it's 3 with music, but I haven't been able to even like touch a guitar. I forced myself last week to sit down with my guitar for a couple of hours because I was like, dude, I haven't even touched one of these things in a couple of months. We don't get to even do what we love to do because we are so exhausted from just trying to keep our heads above water. Now, I'm not saying you say, well, Jones, you can make your own sandwich for $15. You're going to pay somebody to buy a sandwich. I totally get it. And I don't. Believe me. I'm having worked with finance as long as I have, I'm one of the most frugal people you'll ever meet. If you look inside this studio, if you're looking online, virtually this studio is virtually all cash and paid for, a little bit over time. Because it's just I don't like this idea of living high off the hog and diving into leverage. But then again, in this society today, if you look at the way everything runs, everything is operating off of debt and leverage. And you get people like me and a lot of people out there that are like, man, because from a morality standpoint, and it does come into ethics and morality. If you look in the Bible says don't strike hands in pledge. In other words, don't take out loans. Don't loan money out, right? It's real clear on that. And in the Bible, it talks about jubilees, where like basically if you sold your property or lent your property out, it came back to you after the 50th year. Like there's a very clear cut and defined kind of let's see. It's kind of looked down upon to go through and to get into debt. So for me, it always makes me feel gross. Like I try not to do anything with it. And yet that's how this whole world operates. The whole concept of getting into a trust is that you can put your assets in there, and rather than liquidate those assets, you borrow against those assets so that you're actually living off of the loan that you have taken on your own assets. And as a result, you don't have to pay taxes on those loans. That's super simple. It goes deeper than that. Talk to your tax professional, right? But I would submit to you that that's how the majority of the upper crust operate. They have all their assets. They're very poor in terms of liquid assets, but they're extremely rich with assets that they're able to leverage and borrow against. And that's how they do it. But for you and me and for the vast majority of people that are trying to go through and live without debt, we're screwed, man. We're fighting for a $15 sandwich. Okay, so how does this come back to the blue pill? Red pill, blue pill. So I'm sitting there thinking about it. Again, 20 years in finance, degree in finance. I've been doing this a long time. I'm like, okay, how do I play their game without selling my soul? Because that's just it. I'm not going to sell my soul. I mean, there's a big reason why I didn't get further in finance. There's a lot of snakes out there in Wall Street. I'm not giving you new information. I'm a black or white guy. I'm not perfect. I am far from it. But there is so much gray out in that environment. And it's very questionable. And I don't do well with the gray. I think at the end of the day, and that doesn't make me better. This is not a holier than thou type situation. Gosh, man, I'm so far from that. I'm not perfect, man, at all. On Judgment Day, I'll probably have my nose in the corner, But I will say that I do my best. My motto in life is that I work for God first, and that my soul is not worth a single cent of ill-gotten gain. That again, I'm not perfect, but I really, really and truly do try to be the best version of myself that I can be. So I'm like, how can I participate in this environment? How can I participate in this environment? And, I've taken a huge pay cut to go through and learn the trades. But again, like I said, I'm looking at this as an opportunity to buy low, sell high, to learn a new trade, okay, so that I can then go through and then at some point, maybe get into flipping houses and, kind of make a career for myself and for my boys. And, we have the opportunity to, maybe kind of break free from the cycle. But as I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about this and I'm thinking, okay, well, the only way that I can foreseeably go through and to facilitate this idea is I'm going to have to go through and to take out debt and loans, and I'm going to have to go down that route. How am I going to make this happen? Because if I go through and I sit down in front of a banker, let's say tomorrow morning, I go into the bank and I say, hey, listen, I'd like to go through and to take out a loan or get pre-approved to take out a loan so I can go through and buy a house and da-da-da-da-da. My credit's good. I'm not worried about that, because again, I don't do a lot of debt. But he's going to look at me and he's going to say, hey, listen, I need to see some income. I need to see this, that, and the other. And it's going to be an entire process that is going to be predicated on this notion that they're going to be able to back up and prove my allegiance to this matrix. Yeah, your credit's good, but what's your income look like? Well, gosh, I'm in the trades now. There's a lot of cash that's in that environment. So it's hard to go through to demonstrate and to prove that accurately, right? So how do you do it? How do you play the game? Because if this is a matrix, if this is a simulation, it is just, for all intents and purposes, a giant video game that you and I are a part of. If you've ever played Red Dead Redemption or Skyrim or any of the like, it's just a giant open world that we do, quote unquote, have free will over. Just like the guy said on the video. He said, I think that we have free will, but he said, I think God went through and he etched into each one of us a purpose. Like in Red Dead Redemption, you have open world, you can do whatever you want, but there's a main story mode. There are main objectives that you can go through and complete whenever you want. You can also just go through and ride around the map and go hunt animals or go through and collect, rare artifacts or whatever, and completely ignore the story mode, the purpose of you even being there. Or you can just go do the story and you can just complete it and ignore everything else. There you have free will, just like you and I have free will, which means that you have free will on where you spend your time. You have free will on whether or not you go into this job that you hate tomorrow. And again, I'm not saying go quit your job, but I am saying that you have an opportunity to be able to go through and to look at yourself and your environment. I wrote a song a few years ago called Feel the Pull. It says, do you feel the pull? Do you feel the pull? And the premise behind that is there's something outside of us that we can't see, feel, or touch that goes through and it's yanking at us or tugging at us, trying to pull us back on course. It's the story mode of the game saying, hey, man, your objective's over here. You want to go check this out? You're like, no, I think I'm just going to go ride to the next town and ignore that objective. Well, every time you go to a job that you hate, that you know doesn't suit your soul, you're just riding to the next town and ignoring your objective. Again, I'm not telling you to do what I did. I quit my job and doing something completely different. I'm outside of my comfort zone right now, like significantly. I went from feeling very confident in an environment where I was exceptionally good. I exceeded expectations every year. This is, again, not me tooting my own horn. I don't give a shit about any of that stuff. It's just I'm very diligent. I focus very hard on trying to do a good job on whatever I do. Again, I always say I work for God first, okay, before I work for any company. I try to give the best version of myself in whatever it is I do. But I felt very confident, and I was very good at what I did. And now I'm in an environment where I don't even know how to swing a hammer correctly, apparently. So I'm completely just floating aimlessly out in the water with my little water wings on, because just trying to keep my head above water. But this is, like he said, this is where there's lubrication and where he has the opportunity to move. So I would just submit to you this. There are many opportunities to be able to go through and to move through and to navigate this game, this matrix. And I think so many people want to just simply slam down that red pill and pull themselves into this realm of truth because it's intoxicating. When you start going down those rabbit holes of the truth that is out there, and there's a lot of misinformation on the internet. I mean, they say what's on the internet you have to take with a grain of salt. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think that you should be praying about and testing all of those things, using your discernment when you're getting on the internet. I mean, shit, even listening to me. It doesn't matter who it is that you're listening to. You need to be in a position to where you're going through and testing those things to make sure that you're not being deceived. Okay, but I will say that seeking out and searching for the truth is intoxicating. It is. But seeking out the truth pulls you outside of the game, because now you start to see the game differently. You start to resent the game because you start to understand that, wait a second, this isn't even me, man. I'm just ones and zeros in this thing. Like, where am I? Is this like Avatar? Am I in a pod full of goo somewhere? What is this thing? It's easy to do it, and I've done it for years now. When I finally took the red pill years ago, I became very bitter and resentful of the whole thing. Going to a 9-to-5 job becomes almost impossible because you keep asking yourself, what is the fucking point of any of this? I'm paying taxes. I'm doing mindless work that at the end of the day is redundant because of reports X, Y, and Z. I can't tell you how many redundancies and reports and so forth that I have lobbied for, some successful, some not, to get rid of because they were all doing the same bullshit. It's just, it's the game. It's a fucking game. And the thing is, when we look at this red pill versus blue pill, I'm not shitting on the red pill because I think the red pill is extremely important. But if we're not being unplugged anytime soon, you still have to play the game. Because here's the other thing, too. Really stop and think about this. And if you've seen the movies, you know what I'm talking about. Once the red pill is taken and you've awoken from the dream, you've awoken from the simulation, their lives are shit, man. You eat gruel every day. You got holes in your head from where you used to be plugged into the system. You've got shit clothing that you wear every day. You have to live in a cave. You're constantly fighting for your life for the robots that are trying to kill you. And that's not all that dissimilar from waking up today. Because the second that you do wake up, you're constantly then fighting with this notion of like, why am I even doing this? This doesn't make any sense. This is serving a system that is ultimately going to kill me and to kill me or to suppress me. Voting, does it even matter? You know what I mean? And it's easy to get super cynical, and it's easy to go through and get super depressed because and a lot of this then goes from red pill to then black pill, where it's all garbage and we're all going to die. And we're all going to get stuck in a world where everything is me. You get into the book of Ecclesiastes at this point with Solomon when he finally reached his quote-unquote black pill moment. Everything is meaningless. There's nothing new under the sun, right? I've quoted that over and over the course of my life. And you can argue what he was getting at with that whole point. I'm not trying to take Solomon or the word out of context, but I think that the black pill is extremely synonymous with this notion of everything is meaningless. What's the point of it all? You go from being awake to then going, fuck it, man. What's the point? And I have been so black-pilled lately in that what's the point? Everything is meaningless. There's nothing new under the sun. And every time I pray, I keep hearing soon, soon, soon. But I'm like, that's so relative. A day is 1,000 years. 1,000 years is a day. I mean, does soon mean like 580 years? You know what I'm saying? And every time you look at alternative media, they're like, get your popcorn, man. This movie's about to be over. And I'm like, if somebody fucking tells me to get my popcorn one more time. I'm so tired of this central casting, get your popcorn bullshit. Absolutely so sick and tired of it. Because really and truly, if this is a movie or a game or a simulation or a whatever, you cannot, I repeat, you cannot go through and to just exist in this red pill world. Because what does a red pill actually look like? I mean, on paper, living a red pill life actually would be pretty great. You buy yourself a homestead, probably. I hate the notion of like communal living, but let's say, for example, you get a homestead with you and your family or you and a couple of friends, and you guys, because trying to do it by yourself would be, really inconceivable. You get hurt or sick or fill in the blank. It's a lot to take on. But you go through and you get your family together and you buy a homestead and you get that going and you get off the grid and you get rid of your phones and you live off the land and you teach your kids and like that sounds great. That is living a red pill life. That's you going Amish, man. I mean that's because if that's the case and we're in a system and the system is controlling us, then how do you get out of it? You have to completely get out of it. You have to do like what happens in the Matrix. When you take that pill, you unplug and you go live in a cave, eating gruel, wearing scraps. That's what that is. That's you going to a homestead, throwing your phone into the ocean, living off clothes that you made out of hemp, and eating loads and loads of tomatoes and zucchinis, man. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that if that's what you want to do. But again, that's you going through and living in the corner of a video game. You're still plugged into it. That's the thing. You may be mentally unplugged, but physically, if that's even a reality, physically you're still plugged in. So all you have done is you have taken your video game character and you've gone out into the wilderness and into the woods and you've just set up a spot inside the video game. You're making it intentionally harder on yourself inside of this video game in an effort to unplug, because it's not the same as the Matrix. The Matrix, you literally leave the game. Here, you red-pilled, you're still in the game. You're just now making it intentionally harder on yourself to survive. And again, I say probably 5 or 6 times a day, man, I want to throw this phone against the wall and I want to just move out into the middle of nowhere. 100 acres, house in the middle. If you could afford that, right? So how do you survive? How does the blue pill come back into this? Cypher goes on to say in the movie, the guy that was saying, why didn't I take the blue pill if you haven't seen the movies? He says, he makes a deal with Smith to get plugged back into the Matrix. Again, spoiler alert, for a 30-year-old movie almost. So he said, I know the stake is not real. I know it's just ones and zeros. And he says, but man, it's amazing. So here's the thing. What am I saying? So I'm sitting here this morning drinking my coffee and I'm going, how can I go through, knowing what I know, being unplugged, quote unquote, being red-pilled, quote unquote, how can I go through and live and exist inside this game, this simulation, or whatever the fuck this is? How can I go through this and at the same time not lose myself again in it? Because I don't want to go full Cypher and get plugged back in and have my mind wiped. Because he goes on to say, I don't want to remember any of this. I want you to plug me back in, full stop, mind wipe. I just want to be another 1 and 0 in the game. I want to be an NPC. I don't want any of this business, right? But how do you exist like that? Well, every time Neo and the gang would get plugged back in, they still knew they were unplugged, and yet they still interacted with the Matrix, right? I think that's more along the lines of the secret to navigating this thing. So I was sitting there this morning drinking my coffee going, okay, well, how can I make this work? Because I've taken the red pill, and yet I still want to know what steak tastes like again. There's still things that I want to do. And until soon comes, or the fucking popcorn finally, gets, made again for the 18th time as we're waiting for getting our popcorn for the end of this fucking movie that never ends. Until this movie actually does end, we still have to exist. And the thing is, why would you intentionally make it harder on yourself? I'm not saying that you should go through and get dirty knees to go through and to make your life. You still have to go through and to remain authentic. You still have to go through, like I said, I work for God first, period, end of story. So how do you go through and navigate this matrix? How do you go through and navigate without selling your soul? So I was like, well, if I want to go through and to get into the flipping, I'm going to have to go through and to reinsert myself into this game. As much as I don't want to reinsert myself into this game. I did finance for, like I said, 20 years, over 20 years, and I hated it. It's not authentic. It's not who I am. But in order to play the game, I have to go through and integrate with that game. In other words, you have to go through and to understand that it's happening around you, and yet you have to navigate through it. Think back to Red Dead Redemption or one of your favorite video games. You understand that it's a video game. You're playing that game, and you're interacting with everything around it, right? So you are navigating that space under the auspice of, okay, this is not real, but I do have an objective that I want to complete. What if you just took that same approach and said, well, I know this is not a video game. This is ridiculous. I'm just going to run to the edge of the map and just wait until the timer runs out. I think it's kind of one of those situations now in life, and I don't know. I mean, again, the credits could roll to, this afternoon, and I should have had my popcorn ready for the 18th time, right? But it might not. It might be 2 weeks. It might be 2 years. It might be after I'm dead, in which case I sat there refilling the popcorn and remaking it over and over and over and over and over, waiting for something and just wasting the rest of my life. And I think that that's a very real and very credible way of looking at this. Again, like I said, I'm just some dude with a microphone. But at the end of the day, I think that it's very incumbent upon each one of us to make sure that we're taking accountability for our lives in such a way that we are actively taking control of that proverbial Xbox or PlayStation controller and saying, okay, how can I go through and to take advantage of this game? So as I've had a couple of months to reflect outside of the matrix, the corporate matrix, if you will, part of me is now interested in repositioning myself and realigning myself and reintegrating myself back into that matrix. Not fully blue-pilled. I don't want to forget. I don't want to become another cog in the machine, another NPC. But understanding that in order to play the game, you have to follow the story mode. Because my story mode, what's etched in my soul, my being, whatever, is going to require that I go through and I play the game. If you look back over the course of the Bible, for example, you have big characters. Again, the Bible is written for us, not to us. David went through and he played the game. Solomon, Elijah, Moses. I mean, even Jesus. Jesus was a carpenter, So at the end of the day, we have to still participate. And I love to work. I hate working in finance in corporate America, but if I can then go through and leverage that experience and that knowledge and that background with an understanding that it is going to be the platform that takes me through the game, that allows me to go through and to navigate and to fulfill that etching on my life, then yeah, I think it's time to take what's red and blue. Is it purple? Maybe it's time to take the purple pill. You know what I mean? I don't know. Just musings of a madman on a Sunday as I get ready to go back to work on Monday. Hey, listen, I've been. This is episode 10 of the Reality Halfway House. If you like it, please like and subscribe. As I'm growing this podcast, I would love the opportunity to bring on a co-host I've been doing radio for a long time, and I love being able to interact and have that play. You can email me, realityhalfwayhouse@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. But thank you again so much for tuning in today. I hope you have a very blessed week. Think about taking that purple pill. We are caught between worlds. This is the Reality Halfway House.